But recently in the news, we've seen a lot of tragic events take place in the span of the past few days and weeks with gun violence across the country. We've seen in Boston, Fort Worth, Philadelphia, Baltimore, where these mass shootings have taken place. And on on our channel, we talk a lot about what Baba Makaru likes to call the tyranny of stray bullets. And in many cases, we cover tragic events where Black youth are often taken out of their development far too early by some stray bullet from someone firing a gun, oftentimes over a really stupid reason. And in some cases, also police officers just randomly firing guns and killing innocent people, although they're never held accountable for it. But today we're going to talk about some of these recent killings that we've seen taking place and sort of give our thoughts on this. So we saw this mass shooting take place first in Baltimore that left two dead and 28 other children were injured. So 30 people in total were shot in Baltimore. And I know Robert Makaru wanted to give his commentary on this situation along with what happened in Philadelphia recently, a couple of days ago.
Yeah, Ashe, appreciate it, brother. Yeah, yeah. Most often it is the tyranny of stray bullets. Philadelphia was different. This was a targeted, not specifically targeted in terms of an assassination or anything, but uh, it was more targeted than say what happened in Baltimore. So we've had Baltimore, 2 killed, 28 injured. Then we had Philadelphia, 5 killed and I think 3 injured. And then in Fort Worth, Texas, 3 killed and 8 injured, in a span of 3 or 4 days. A lot of it, people gathering to because there's a holiday, July the 4th, quote unquote, American Independence Day came in the middle of the week. So people have various gatherings, cookouts, and just things that people should be able to do normally in their lives. And someone, for some reason, in Baltimore, they're searching for multiple suspects. People would gather for a block party, and some people opened fire. Now, they may have tried to target a particular person, but this mentality of just firing, wildly into crowds, it's something that even during the crack era, there were when actually there were more, homicides in the African American community than there are today. But you didn't have this type of mass killings in general. I'm not saying you didn't ever have any, but you didn't have this type of situation like you had in Baltimore, where 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez and 20-year-old Carlos Fabemi, were killed. The 28 others, you had several females and males that were shot down. One 13-year-old, one 14-year-old, two 15-year-olds, three 16-year-olds, two 17-year-olds, two 18-year-olds, three 19-year-olds, one 20-year-old, one 23-year-old, one 32-year-old. Those were the female victims. The male victims, one 13-year-old, one 15-year-old, two 16-year-olds, two 17-year-olds, three 18-year-olds, one 22-year-old, and one 31-year-old. So here you have very young people, very, 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 very young people experiencing, this type of trauma. And we don't know in terms of what is the impact of this long term, particularly on the young people who got shot, and the impact on the community in general. I mean, it just seems like we're in a place, in this late stage of the American empire, where things are just totally unraveling, and we are seeing things in our community that we've never seen, even during the worst of times. Now, I will say this, when we study our history, this is the teachings of Ptah-hotep, the world's oldest book. Our ancestors in ancient Kemet realized that there were negative influences in the world, and they labeled it Isfet, evil or chaos or untruths. And they realized that it was a struggle between Isfet and Ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. And because they had the power via an educational system, a spiritual system, an ethical system that the overwhelming majority of the community lived by, they were able to contain, for the most part. Obviously, there were times when things, when Isfet, rose to positions of where it, society may have been disrupted. But generally speaking, for the entire history, overall, the history of ancient Kemet and Nile Valley civilizations, Ma'at, with his 7 cardinal virtues, truth, justice, harmony, propriety, reciprocity, balance, and order, ruled the day. Balance, for example, our ancestors were the first people to recognize that our minds, that the brain of human beings had 2 distinct parts that had different purposes, cortical hemispheres, but they were joined. And so their objective was to create a culture where human beings were, generally speaking, operated on the basis of cerebral balance. They didn't get their emotions so out of control that it dominated, reason and, and rational thinking. There was a sense where, the feelings and spirituality, was balanced with logic. I mean, that was just one of the objectives of how the Ma'atian virtue of balance was operated. It was very practical. These weren't just ideas that were floating around in somebody's mind. They were actually put in place for people to live by. Young people were given, instructions by the various, Sabars, like Ptah-hotep, for example, and Perbor and Kajimi and all of the others, Kahuna Noob. So, that's where we've gotten, because what you see here basically is, obviously there's no cerebral balance. Someone's emotions are totally out of control. Someone's spirituality is totally at the base of the path, where there's just total disregard for the life of another human being. And it's unprecedented. I mean, we have seen, our historical enemies, right, the white supremacy dynamic, doing this to us. But this is us doing it to ourselves. So Baltimore is a situation I would definitely classify as the tyranny of stray bullets, because even though they may have had one person, maybe more than one person in mind when they open fire. But when you shoot 30 people, I mean, I listen to a lot of alternative sources on the war in Ukraine, and sometimes they give the figures, from a particular skirmish or a battle somewhere, and they will say, the Ukrainians lost, 15 soldiers, or the Ukrainians lost 30 soldiers. I mean, these people are in a war. And here you have a situation like that, right here in the United States, in this particular case in South Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the situation with this really sick human being, if you want to call him that, Kimbrady Carriker, who essentially was a Peyton Gendron in blackface. Peyton Gendron, as all of us know, last year targeted innocent Black people at a grocery store in Buffalo. This guy, who sometimes dresses, as a female or whatever, really is just a sick human being, went on a rampage. He purchased the parts from a supplier and built 2 ghost guns, one an assault rifle, which he used to kill 5 people, and and he also had a handgun that was a ghost gun. So these weren't guns that he went to a dealer and purchased. So we say it's similar to Gendron in Buffalo. Carriker targeted innocent Black people during a killing spree in a Philadelphia neighborhood, armed with an assault rifle, wearing a ski mask and body armor. Carriker killed 22-year-old Lasheed Merritt, 29-year-old Demir Stanton, 59-year-old Ralph Morales, and 15-year-old Juwan Brown, and 31-year-old Joseph Wama Jr. Not sure. I mean, those names could, at least one, maybe 2 of these people could be, some of our brothers from the continent or sisters. 2 boys, aged 2 and 13, were shot in the leg or in stable condition. A woman, 33, was also injured by glass, along with another 2-year-old boy. So this lady happened to be riding by, and they have the video of Carriker opening fire on her van as she rode by, and she had twin sons that were 2 years old. One was shot, other was injured by flying glass. She was injured by flying glass, but by the grace of God, no one in that particular car was killed. And I want to come back to this after I finish. Similar to other cowards, Carriker surrendered when cornered by the police. When arrested, they found a police scanner, several magazines, and a handgun, stuck in his bulletproof or ballistic vest. And so we pose the question, how do we prepare for this type of violence? When you have a random mass killer who comes from within our community. This guy lived in a house with 7 other people. Now, I don't know if the first person, because they found that the 31-year-old Joseph Wama, Wamah, they found him later in a home. I think his father came home and found him killed. So who knows, exactly, what happened there. But these other people were just going about their business. I forgot which one it was. Had just walked out of the house on the way to a convenience store, and this guy comes by and guns him down in cold blood. So, you know, we are always telling our people that given these conditions, given the collective psychology that, is taking place in this country. And when I say collective psychology, I'm talking about, from the White House, Nero, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, all the way down to these people like Carriker. There's a collective psychology that bends toward death and destruction. Okay, I mean, you got these political morons in the Biden administration on the verge of pushing this world, towards nuclear war. And we'll be very interested to see what happens when NATO meets next week, because there are many analysts who believe that Biden is going to authorize some NATO countries to send troops into Ukraine, and they would probably just pick some people that they were willing to sacrifice, like the Poles or people from Lithuania or Estonia or somewhere like that. So I'm talking about the whole collective psychology. I don't see any end in sight, for this, given the collective psychology in this country right now. And really, it's been that way, quite frankly, from the very beginning, to be honest with you. But we tell, we talk to our people and we say, listen, you need to always be on high alert wherever you are, whatever you are doing. And it's a shame that people can't do anything. I mean, I think right here in Charlotte, we probably avoided a mass shooting on July the 4th. When there was a disruption at a fireworks event in downtown Charlotte. Apparently, a lot of young people came down and, just started their own fireworks show while the official fireworks show was going on. And the police wound up arresting 30 plus people, confiscating 4 guns. 17 juveniles were arrested, and the city decided to send citations to their parents. These were people between the ages of 13 and 17. The parents received citations for contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. So we just avoided a situation like that. So in your grocery stores, in your malls, where, you have to just be totally aware of your surroundings. But if you're in a situation like this 33-year-old sister with her twin sons just riding by, I don't know how you prepare for something like that. I really don't. But this is what we're dealing with, and quite frankly, I don't think anything is. The United States is going in the direction it's going in. It's on a downward spiral. But we can do things ourselves within our community. I mean, we actually need a mass movement against community violence. I mean, it's that simple. And I mean, it includes, going on the offense, taking on these, for example, like the NBA young boy that Ja Morant was listening to, where he was talking about a dead N-word. I mean, we hit this violence is constantly being promoted, by these surrogates of white supremacy who call themselves entertainers in this industry that's called gangster rap, hip hop, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not condemning the whole industry, because there are a lot of positive people, but I'm just saying that if we want to deal with this violence, we have to attack it from every angle. And I'm dealing with a situation in my family now where, I have a loved one that drug addiction, has caused an arrest because, being addicted to drugs often leads to, crimes. I mean, in my opinion, the possession or use of drugs should be treated, as an illness. But a lot of times when people are on drugs, they engage in criminal activities to support their habits. And then, of course, there is the lure of, the materialism and the, conspicuous consumption and those types of things that people see, that particular activity, the sale of drugs and whatnot, as something that's economically beneficial. So I'm saying we have to have a comprehensive struggle against this problem, because it's just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse, in my opinion. Okay, Brother Amos.
First, I just want to say, let me know if you need anything, any type of support, anything I can give and help support you while you supporting your family member who's going through what they're going through.
Right. Appreciate it.
This situation that we see with these acts of violence, it really boils down to a cultural crisis, and it takes a cultural revolution. And this is really not just a Black or African cultural revolution in America, but it's really a cultural revolution of the entire American system and the mentality that exists in this country, because we see this same thing in the white community, in the Asian community, and then the Hispanic and Latino community as well, where people don't really value the lives of other people. And a man killing another man, a woman killing another woman is something that's happened since the beginning of time, but not as carelessly as it has been happening lately. Probably since the 1990s, when I was in high school, was when you had the first mass shooting take place inside of a school. And then ever since then, it seems this has been a repeating issue, even though guns have existed in this country for hundreds of years. A lot of people like to point to what they call gun violence, and they think the solution is to take away people's ability to own a firearm. But if people didn't own firearms, then we would just have other types of mass killings. We would have people going to CVS and Walgreens and Lowe's and Home Depot and making manufactured bombs and killing people that way. That's something you can never really ban that. So it's not about what type of weapons that they have access to. It's about the mentality that they possess. How do you change that mentality? Where you change the culture, you change the educational system. You stop miseducating people and you educate them on the values of life. And you educate them on what's important and how to value someone else's life. Another thing is, if the government gave everyone $1,000 or sometimes more during the COVID crisis, and then they also gave out these PPP loans, and you give $60 billion to Ukraine, how much would it cost to arm every American citizen with a bulletproof vest? If you instructed everybody to wear masks in order to protect themselves from a virus going inside of a store or a bank or anywhere else in this country, hospital, if you told people they had to take a jab in order to be able to work a job, but you're so concerned about the gun violence and you're producing all of these media stories on gun violence and how, laws need to be changed, then why not be proactive and protect the citizens by giving them some body armor that they can use on an everyday basis that would more than likely limit a lot of deaths, even in the case of a stray bullet. Now, some people as you stated, are just unlucky victims. Some people, you the first person that the shooter sees, you don't even have a chance to react, and that's just unfortunate. And then sometimes, in some cases, some people may get shot in the head, or they may get shot in the leg and bleed out. Um, but how many lives would bulletproof vests save if the government provided people with that body armor? That's a question we have to ask. But overall, as you stated, I agree. I believe that this is a cultural crisis, and inside of our own community, we have to start with us first, and then let others start within their communities. But it also should be a push on a systematic level to systematically start to incorporate more teachings around valuing life. And that's something that a country like America, is hard for them to teach, because they go out everywhere in the rest of the world and commit these same acts of violence on other people. So if they change that system, they would ultimately have to change their own ways, and they're not going to do that.
It's not going to happen. I mean, we live in a country that's constructed on a foundation of crimes against humanity. The genocide of indigenous people, the theft of their land, the theft of African people, from our homeland, and the theft of our labor, and the systematic destruction of African people who had to live for 246 years under the daily terror of chattel slavery. And this has had this, like Amos Wilson always says, you all always talking about back then. Back then is now. What language are you speaking? What God are you worshiping? Right? And then we know about this field of study called epigenetics, which proves that trauma can be transferred from one generation to another. I mean, it's amazing. All of us aren't insane, considering the fact that we came from a culture of tremendous order and we were thrown into the chaos. Those of us who survived, those of us whose ancestors survived the horrific Middle Passage, where, on some voyages, the death rate was 50%, some it was 10%. Eric Williams, did a study of the voyages that he studied. The death rate was 33%. I mean, you're looking at people just dying. You are chained to a person. The person is alive one day and dead the next, and you're still chained to them. So, I mean, all of this has had an impact on us. But you said a couple of things I want to respond to, if I can remember. One was the bulletproof vest. Last year, almost, I don't know if you were aware of this or not, the county commissioners of Mecklenburg County, which the chairperson of the county commission is a person of African descent. Charlotte really has, for African people in this community to be dealing with the problems, we have a Black establishment. I don't know if there's any city of this size that has as many people in positions. Atlanta has as many, but Atlanta is smaller than Charlotte. But they voted to send bulletproof vests to Ukraine. The Mecklenburg County Board of County Commissioners said the police had some excess bulletproof vests that they weren't using. It was a small number, but the number isn't important. It's the symbolism. And of course, I ripped them to shreds. I said, you can't even protect your people in your own community. You have not arrested anyone for killing 4 people of African descent during a mass shooting on June 22nd, 2020.
Right.
And you send in bulletproof vests to Ukraine.
And see, that argument here, and just to get a quick response that to support what you're saying, their argument here would be, we need gun control. But then when you look at a war in Ukraine, their argument is, let's give them more weapons.
Look, the ultimate hypocrites. The other thing you said, I don't know if you saw this post almost. It didn't get a lot of views, and maybe because I couldn't, the graphic that a lot of people will see a graphic and then they respond to the content based on the graphic. But in Houston, there was a couple, a black couple, and I'm not sure exactly how everything unfolded, but there were two groups of armed people that confronted. The husband was inside. The wife, 8 months pregnant, was outside, and this young guy got out of a car, looked like a Dodge Charger or something like that, and walked over to her. He walked away. There was a guy in the car beside them who then got out of his car with a gun. And so, like I said, I don't know all the details of this, but that's not the point. The wife called the husband to come outside. The husband came out. The one guy is walking towards them with a gun. The husband and wife were both armed. They opened fire. If they had not been armed, 3 people could have been killed because she's 8 months pregnant. The husband, the wife, and the baby.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw it. So guns serve a purpose. The problem is not guns. Now, I do think selling the parts to make these ghost guns, I think that's a problem. I mean, there are enough guns being manufactured that people could buy guns if they want to. In the case of this Carriker joker, he was able to build the guns that he used to kill people. And the city of Philadelphia has now decided to sue the companies. But let me just read a couple other things about Carriker, because here's a person who is all over the place in terms of it seems like his sickness is. And I don't get these people who say, well, people are not being influenced by the music. They're not being influenced by. I don't understand that thought process, because people are being influenced. Said on Facebook, Carriker shared videos of guns and expressed concern that President Biden was going to take guns away. Multiple posts on the page dealt with concerns that people's guns would be taken away from the government. Carriker shared videos of children with guns. He also shared a post about supporting President Trump. Authorities have not identified Carriker as a transgender or a woman. Police referred to the suspect as a male. Neighbors told the New York Post that they had seen Carriker dressed as a woman. And, they said he would do it randomly. He's weird, to tell you the truth. Yeah, obviously. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, Carriker told police, get this, that the shooting motive was to help authorities solve the city's gun crisis. So he's going to solve the city's gun crisis by shooting innocent people down. He obviously didn't run up on the boys in the hood
He was
likely armed.
Afraid because he wore a bulletproof vest.
He says all these guys are out there killing people. And he said that the suspect believed Yahweh would send others to help. The Inquirer reported that one witness said Carriker shouted battle cries during the rampage, and a roommate called Carriker a biblical extremist. What is this other than the negative impact of the collective psychology of the American empire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's that's what it is. And that's why we have been saying from day one, since we started this podcast, we have constantly said there's a need for a cultural revolution in our community to break the monopoly that this pathological society has on our minds. Is leading many of our people to destroy ourselves, if not, outright by violence, by eating ourselves to death, by self-medicating, using drugs. All of these things contribute,
I
right?
really
I mean,
believe
this,
a thousand years from now,
go ahead,
people
bro.
people going to look back at America as the worst failed human experience in human history.
I totally agree.
Once America finally does collapse, it's going to be an historical reference point for why you should not build a society or a civilization like that. And I believe all of the people who wanted to get away from monarchies and create what they call democracy in the future, they'll be teaching classes about the same way we look at ancient civilizations and we look reference ancient Kemet, or we look at the Syrians or the Persians, what caused them to fall, or we look at the Ming Dynasty and all these other different groups around the world. People are going to look at America and they're going to say the policies they implemented, because of its foundational hypocrisy and its unsustainability, you can't build a society based off of those values.
That's right. You're correct. You are correct.